quiz tomorrow is 7 questions. You'll have 3 like the graphing and 4 of the ones on the last page where you're coming up with the equation. So I'm going to look at number 3 with you guys. So I'm going to graph the parabola, find the vertex, focus, directrix, and axis of symmetry. Before we do anything here, we need to get the parentheses squared isolated. That's always the first thing we want to do. So how do I get that negative to the other side? Awesome. Divide by -1. So we have y plus 3, squared is equal to -3 times x minus 2. So what's our vertex going to be? Be careful because the h goes with the x. So the number with the x is always going to come first. So it'll be 2, -3. So be careful. The number with the x is always your h. That's always going to come first. Don't forget to change the signs. So we go to the right 2, down 3. That's going to be our vertex. Next, we want to find the focus. Well, P helps us find the distance between the vertex and the focus. So the coefficient in front of the parentheses is going to be 4P. So we set 4P equal to -3, and we solve for P. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So P equals -3/4. Now, before I put that on my graph, I need to know which way my graph is going to open. So if it's y squared and P is negative, which way does my graph open? Up, right, left, or down? Olivia. It's going to open to the left. Because it's y squared, we know it's either going to be left or right. When P is negative, it opens to the left. When P is positive, it opens to the right. So since P is negative, we know it's going to open to the left. So it's going to open this way. P is the distance from the vertex to the focus. So we're going to go to the left 3/4. So it's going to be there. So my focus is going to have the point. We start at 2 and went to the left 3/4, so I'm just going to subtract 3/4 from 2. I'll do the math here. We have 2 minus 3/4. What do I need if I'm adding a fraction with a whole number? Common denominator, so I can make it 2/1. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4, so make it 8/4. So this gives us 5/4. So our focus is going to be at 5/4, comma. The y value did not change. We're still down -3. Now I need my directrix, which goes in the opposite direction. So since I went to the left for my focus, my directrix is going to be a line that goes -3/4 to the right, or 3/4 to the right. So I start at my vertex and I go 3/4 to the right. So that'd put us about here. Because my line touched the x-axis, it's going to be x equals, and then I would just add 3/4 to 2. So 2, I went to the right 3/4, so I'm going to say 2 plus 3/4. Again, I need a common denominator, so that makes this 11/4. One last thing we need is our axis of symmetry. Our axis of symmetry is a line that connects all 3 things together. So a line that's going to go through our focus and through our vertex. And it's going to be perpendicular to the directrix. So here, our axis of symmetry, since we touched the y-axis, it's going to be y equals, we touched the y-axis at -3. Also, our y value is -3. So our axis of symmetry is y equals -3. So going back to 1, we're going to graph our parabola. We always want to get the squared term all by itself. We have to isolate the squared term. So what should we do first here? Divide by 3. So we get x squared equals 4 over 3y. Since it's x squared, which direction is our graph going to open? Up or down, or left or right? Up or down, since it's x squared. And since p is positive, is it up or down? It's going to be up. So we know it's going to open up. And what is our vertex here? 0, 0. We're not adding anything to the x or y, so it's 0, 0. So vertex at 0, 0, we know it's going to open up. Next, let's find what P is so we can find our focus and the directrix. So we know that the number in front of the y is 4p. So I'm going to say 4p equals 4/3. So when I divide by 4, I have a fraction in a fraction, so we have to keep change flip. Keep the top, change to multiplication. We're going to flip the bottom to 1/4. And this would simplify to 1/3. So P is 1/3. P is the distance from the center to the focus. Which direction am I going to put the focus? Up. I'm going to go up 1/3 because I know that the focus is going to be inside my parabola. So my focus is going to have the point of 0, 1/3. For the directrix, we go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go down 1/3. So our directrix is a line. Is it x equals or y equals? Y equals. Our line touches the y-axis, so it's y equals what? -1/3. Perfect. And then lastly, our axis of symmetry goes right through the middle of our parabola. What would our axis of symmetry be here? X equals 0. Perfect. Let's look at number 7. We're going to graph our ellipse here. Before I graph my ellipse, what do I need to do first? What does this always have to be equal? To 1. So how do I change this to be equal to 1? We're going to divide everything by 12. Perfect. So you always need it to be equal to 1. So when we divide by 12, you can think about it as keep, change, flip. So instead of dividing by 12, I'm going to multiply by 1 over 12. So that would give us x squared over 144. Plus, again here, instead of multiplying by 12, you can think about it, instead of dividing by 12, you can think about it as multiplying by 1 over 12. So this would be y plus 1 squared over 36 equals 1. Now that it's equal to 1, we can start finding all of our things for our ellipse. What's our center going to be? Awesome. 0, -1. We're not adding anything to the x, and we always change the sign. So it'd be 0, -1. So I'm going to stay at 0, go down -1, put a point for my center. What's our a squared here? 144. The bigger number's always your a squared, the bigger denominator. Since the a squared's under the x, we know it's going to be a horizontal ellipse. So if a squared is 144, we know that a is going to be 12. And if b squared is 36, we know that b is going to be what? 6. I can put those on my graph now. My a, since it's under the x, we're moving to the left or right. So I'm going to the left 12 and to the right 12. So from our center, we go to the left 12 and to the right 12. So A is the distance from the center to the vertices. So my point for my vertices is going to be what? Awesome. 12, -1, and -12, -1. We are just adding and subtracting 12 from the x. Since our x changes, since that a was under the x, we add and subtract 12 from the x from our center. Let's put our co-vertices on here. So B gives us the distance from the center to the co-vertices. So I'm going to go up 6 and down 6 for my co-vertices. So we add and subtract 6 from the y in our center. I put this in the wrong spot, sorry. We go up 6 from -1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and down 6. So up 6 and down 6 from the center. So when we add and subtract 6 to -1, our x value stays as 0. -1 plus 6 would be 5. And -1 minus 6 would be -7, which is where I put those points. So you can always graph it and then just see where you put the points. That should relate to your co-vertices. We can draw our ellipse here, but we're missing one thing. We're missing the foci. So our foci always fall on the vertices, whatever axis the vertices are. So they're going to be horizontal here. To find our foci, we need to find C. So our formula is c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So c squared equals a squared, we know is 144, minus b squared, which is 36. So c squared equals 108. Take the square root. So c equals the square root of 108. We always need to simplify our radical. 2 factors of 108 would be 2 and 54. 2 factors of 54 would be 2 and 27. 2 factors of 27 are 3 and 9. And then 2 factors of 9 are 3 and 3. So I have a pair of 2s and a pair of 3s and then a solo 3. So outside we've got 6, inside 3. So 6 square root 3. We want to look at the unsimplified square root to tell us about where this is on our graph for when we graph it. So square root of 108 is it's a little bit more than the square root of 100. It's probably the closest perfect square next to it. What's the square root of 100? 10. So we could call this about 10.5-ish. Again, calling it 10.5 or 10.2 or 10.7 really doesn't make a difference. We just know that it's going to be in between 10 and 11. So a little bit more than 10. So when I put this on my graph, I'm going to go to the right 10.5-ish and to the left 10.5-ish. But when I name my foci points, I have to use the simplified square root. So we made up 10.5-ish. We can't put that as our answer for the point. That just tells us where the points are going to be. When we write our foci, we have to use the square root, the exact answer here. So because my foci went to the left and right, I'm going to add and subtract it to the x in my center. So 0 plus or minus 6 square root 3, comma -1 would be our foci. If you want to write it as 2 separate points, that's fine, or you could leave it like this. Either way works. But we always add it to the x since it went to the left and right. And then the y just stays the same. Any questions here? So this is our answer and the graph is our answer. So let's look at number 6. So here, are we going to have a horizontal ellipse or a vertical ellipse? It's going to be horizontal because the a, the bigger denominator, is under the x, so it's going to be horizontal. So that means my vertices are going to be horizontal and my foci are going to be horizontal. So this is my a squared, and this one's my b squared. So what is a? 4, and b is 3. What's my center? Awesome, 2, -5. So I'm going to go to the right 2 and down to -5. Now A is the distance from the center to the vertices. And because A was under X, that means I'm going to move left and right 4. So I'm going to go to the left 4 and to the right 4. We also, since we moved to the X, we changed the X, we just add and subtract 4 to the X from our center. So our vertices are going to be, when we subtract 4, we get -2, -5. When we add 4, we get 6, -5. You can just plot those on your graph and see where you put the points. Or one way you can double check to make sure you put them in the right spot is we know that A was under the X, so I'm adding 4 to the X in my center. Next, let's put our co-vertices. Co-vertices are the B. So since our B was under the Y, we're going to move up and down 3 because our B is 3. So I'm going to go up 3 and down 3. So we just add and subtract 3 from the Y. So our X in our co-vertices stays as 2. When I add 3, I went up to -2. When I subtract 3, we went down to -8. Bless you. Last thing we need to put are the foci. Foci is our C, so we have to use our formula to find C. C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So C squared equals A squared is 16 minus B squared, which is 9. 16 minus 9 would be 7. Take the square root, so C equals square root 7. We can't simplify square root 7. Since our foci are on the x-axis, we would add and subtract it to the x in our center. So for our foci, we'd have 2 plus or minus square root 7, comma -5. And then to put it on our graph, we just need to approximate about what this number is. So it's in between square root 4 and in between square root 9. So square root 4 would be 2, square root 9 is 3. So it's about, we could call it 2.5. Again, there's no difference between 2.5, 2.6, 2.7. We just know that it's in between 2 and 3. So I'm going to go to the right 2.5 from my center and to the left 2.5 from the center. And then I'm going to connect my vertices and my co-vertices to draw my ellipse. So this is part of our answer, and the graph is part of our answer. Let's do number 11. So we want to find the equation of a parabola with the focus of 3, -2 and directrix at x is equal to 5. So let's graph that so we can get an idea of what we have here. So I'm going to put a point at 3, -2. That's my focus. And my directrix is at x equals 5. So I'm going to go 5 on my x-axis and put a line through the x-axis. So this is my focus and my directrix. Our vertex is going to be the midpoint of the focus and the directrix. Bless you. So the vertex is the midpoint of the focus and the directrix. So in between them would be 4, -2. Which direction is our parabola going to open here? to the left. It opens in the direction of the focus and away from the directrix. Your parabola is never going to touch the directrix. It opens away from the directrix and towards the focus here. So because it opens to the left, is it x squared or y squared? It's going to be y squared. It's going to be y squared, and p is positive or negative? P is negative because it opens to the left. It's opening in the negative direction, so make a little note that P is negative. So when I put this into my formula, I have y minus my k, so y minus negative 2 would be plus 2 squared, is equal to 4p times x minus h, which is 4. Remember, the x value always goes with the x, or the h always goes with the x. Next thing we need to do is find what p is. What is p? The distance from what to what? The distance from the vertex to the focus. How far is our vertex to the focus here? 1. So p is going to be -1. Don't forget, we said p has to be negative because it opens to the left. So p is -1. So our equation is going to be y plus 2 squared is equal to -4 times x minus 4. So let's look at 13. Find the equation of an ellipse with vertices at 0 plus or minus 5 and foci at 0 plus or minus 3. So let's graph it. We have vertices at 0, so we stay at 0, go up 5 and down 5. And foci at 0 plus or minus 3. So I stay at 0, go up 3 and down 3. So what would our center be? Center is going to be the midpoint of our vertices. So that would be 0, 0 here. Do we have a horizontal ellipse or a vertical ellipse? Since our vertices are vertical, it's going to be a vertical ellipse. It's going to be like this. So what does that mean? Is the a going to go under the x or the y? Is the a squared going to go under the x squared or the y squared? It's a vertical ellipse. The y squared, perfect. So our formula is going to be x squared over b squared plus y squared over a squared equals 1. So because it is a vertical ellipse, the a is going to go under the y squared. So our a is the distance from the center to our vertice. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a is 5. So when I plug in my a squared, this would be 25. It doesn't give us any information about the covertices, but it does tell us the foci. So the distance from the center to the foci is C. So 1, 2, 3 would be C. So if I know what A and C are, I could use my formula to find B. My formula is C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So 9 is equal to 25 minus B squared. Subtract 25 to move it to the other side. We get negative 16 equals negative b squared. Divide by negative 1. This would give us b squared equals 16. You can take the square root here, so we know that b equals 4, but when we plug it back in, we're going to square it anyways. So b squared would be 16. And this is our equation. A is the distance from the center to the vertices. C is the distance from the center to the foci. All of this is in the notes from 9.1 and 9.2. If we're still confused on where things are coming from, go back to the notes. Read the vocab. It'll help you. Any questions here? All right, let's look at 15. So we're going to find the equation of an ellipse with a major axis length 6 and foci at 0 plus or minus 2. So major axis length is the length of the whole major axis. So it's from vertex to vertex. So from the center to our vertex is going to be half of that. So our major axis length is 2a. So we'd say 6 equals 2 times a. So divide by 2, a is equal to 3. And our foci are at 0 plus or minus 2. Let's draw that so we know which direction our foci are in. So stay at 0, go up 2, and down 2. So if our foci are vertical, do we have a vertical ellipse or horizontal ellipse? We're going to have a vertical ellipse. So vertical ellipse means that the a squared is going to go under the y squared. What is our center here? 0, 0. It's going to be the midpoint of the foci, or the midpoint of the vertices. So the center is 0, 0. So I have x squared over b squared plus y squared over a squared. We said that a goes under the y because it's a vertical ellipse, because our foci are vertical. And we know what a is. What's a? 3. So I can plug in a squared, which is 9. Now we just need to find b. What does the foci tell us? It tells us what c is. C is the distance from the center to the foci, so C is 2. So we can use our formula to find B. So we have C squared equals A squared minus B squared. C squared is 4 equals A squared, which is 9, minus B squared. Subtract 9 on both sides, so negative 5 equals negative B squared. Divide by negative 1. So 5 is equal to b squared. You could take the square root, but when we plug it back in, we're going to square it anyways. So b squared is 5. So this is our answer. So I worked out the answers to the review, put a little explanation to why. So if you want to look at the PDF of the answers, I'm also going to post another version of the answers, which has more questions. So if you notice here, we did like the odd numbers, 9, 11, 13, 15. There's more examples, so there's a few even questions if you want to do those. So I'll post the answers that have those with it. Also, if you want more practice, go back and either do the homework or do the notes again. The notes in the homework are really good practice for this. So let's look at number 9. Write the equation of a parabola with a focus of 2, 0 and directrix at x equals negative 2. So let's graph this. We have a focus at 2, 0. So I'm going to go to the right 2, stay at 0. And our directrix is at x equals negative 2. So I'm going to go to where x is negative 2 and put a line down there. So where would our vertex be? 0, 0. It's the midpoint of the focus and the directrix. So 0, 0. Which direction is our parabola going to open? To the right. It opens in the direction of the focus. So because it opens to the right, is it an x squared or y squared? Y squared. So we have y squared equals 4p times x. We don't add anything to the x or y because our vertex is 0, 0. Now p is the distance from the vertex to the focus. So what would p be here? 2. So we're going to plug 2 into P. Is P positive or negative here? Positive, because our graph opens to the right. It opens in the positive direction. If it opened to the left, it would be negative. So here we have y squared equals 8x. We just multiply 4 times P, which gives us 8.